Good to go, Bill.
We're live?
We're live.
Oh, I didn't get the countdown. That's why. Well, welcome to Model Railroading Live, MRL, the greatest model railroading show in the world, if not the universe. This is September 1st to 2021. And we are coming to you live from the greatest country in the world, the United States. And I say that with the utmost pride and dignity. And so we have a special show tonight, a special guest, actually a repeat guest on who's been on the show before. But before I introduce him and tell you more about him, I will give you a little heads up. We are now into September, and Railroad Empire will be premiering on Saturday, September 18th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's right. You heard me correct. Railroad Empire, How We Build Them, will be back on September 18th on Saturday at 9 p.m. Also, and I know you guys, all guys and gals out there, have been waiting for this announcement. On September 23rd, that's a Thursday evening, Johnny's Train Talk Show will be back. I know. It's been a drought, a long, dry season. John just came back from his whirlwind model railroading tour of all the world and some parts of the lower Antilles. And so he has an exciting lineup, an exciting show to bring back. And he's coming back again, like I said, Thursday, September 23rd, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, we have some special guests coming up, a special show that will be airing in September, actually on Saturday, September 11th. And I will give you more update on that towards the end of the show, as I want to make sure that everybody's in everything and everybody's on the show here and listening. So you guys got the whole thing. Let me see who's up in this thing. We got the Train Freak. Hey, what's up? M&M Rail, CV Railroad in HO scale. Grandpa Rails is here. Let's see more. Eric Hall's in the house. Let's see. Indian Head Valley Railroad. Hey, Wilma, what's up? Model Railroading Live. Oh, that's me. That's us. Yes. Grandpa Rail, CV, Indian Head. Hillbilly Railroad. Hey, good evening. How are you? Possum Bayo. Right. I hope you're all right. I hope you're not down in the Louisiana. Our wishes and our prayers go out to all those in the Louisiana area, especially Cooltropolis. He lives in the Louisiana area. I hope that he's all right and his family fared well, but it's a shame of what's going on down there. Brad's Trains, Jerry's in the house. Jerry, hello. Let's see, who else? Hey, Jerry. Hey, Grandpa. Oh, Michael Broshiers is in the house. Everybody seems to be here. So let's get this party started. This guest has been he was a former guest on the show. He's a repeat guest, but he's got something a little different this time around that he wants to do a little shout out. And I definitely am thrilled to have him. And he did the show. He did the 4-part series with John Farrington on the small shelf layout and what you could do. So let's bring in Tommy K. Tom?
How you doing there, Bill?
I am well, Thomas. I am well. I cannot pronounce your last name, but it will be Tommy K for perpetuity for the rest of your entire life. Sorry about that, buddy.
That's all right. I'm going by Tommy K now with a certain couple of people that want to call me that because there's other people out there named Tom, so it gets confusing.
Yeah. I mean, I used to work with a guy named Laskowski, and everybody would call him Ski. And I came to find out, I always called him, hey, you. But he told me years later that he never liked being called Ski. And I was like, well, how did it start? He says, when I was in Vietnam, they had a couple of skis, Polish guys. And he was like, They just call him Ski, and I would be like, "Oh, okay." He said, "So it's stuck."
Yeah.
So, but hey, thanks for coming back on.
Yeah. It was good to be back. Good to see you
Yeah,
guys.
it really is, and for you guys out there, uh, Thomas has published a new book. It's called "Building the Right Size Layout," and it's Model Railroader, uh, Comback Media,
Mhm.
and for the low price of $21.99. I bought my own. It's Let me tell you, it's chock full of pictures. It's chock full of information. It talks
Yeah.
about prototype inspired track plans right there.
Yeah.
Beautiful layout, beautiful. It's a well done. Let me tell you something. Comeback always does a good job, but this is a very well done magazine, layout wise and visual. It's easy to read. The print is large enough for us old guys that have bifocals, but it's also very well written. I have
Well,
to
thank
say,
you.
Tom, it
Thank
is.
you.
It's very well written,
Yeah.
and when Tom and I were talking earlier, I said when I got when I got the book and the thing, and I started reading it, I was like saying to myself, I definitely have heard this someplace before, and then I went back to our interview, and a lot of that was in the interview, so it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I seriously would recommend all you guys out there to purchase this book because it really it's got a lot of useful information in there, a lot, and it's a good reference book too. Good reference. So Tom, what was the genesis of this? I mean, how did this come about?
Oh, start way back when I got an email from Eric White at Combach, who's the one that does my articles typically for Model Railroader. And he contacted me and said, "Would you be interested in writing a book?" And I was shocked and surprised, but pleasantly so. And I said, "Well, what do you want the book to be about?" And he said, "Whatever you want. Just make a proposal. We'll submit it, and we'll see where it goes." I think they were reaching out to new authors. Dave Abelese is one of the new authors. He just had a book that came out on signaling from Kalmbach. Lance Benheim also has a book out that came out just before mine on designing and building a layout. And then my book is the third one. I think they wanted to get some new authors out there. Tony Custer and Jeff Wilson and some of those other ones have done a bunch of books, but I think they were just looking to try to change things up a little bit. So I was trying to think, well, what am I going to write about? And I said, well, a lot of people contact me because of my YouTube channel and my
Yeah.
website and everything. And they ask questions. I said, well, why don't I just take those questions and kind of put them into a book, answer the questions and just kind of go through the construction of the layout and then even go into the operations. So that's what I did. I submitted a proposal and then didn't hear anything for quite a while. So I figured, well, I guess, they're not interested or whatever. Then they sent me back an email, said, "Yes, we're going to do your book." I'm like, "Great."
There
Then
you
I
go.
thought, "Uh-oh,
Yeah.
now I'm in trouble. Now I got to actually write this thing. And I've never written a book before."
I
So
have
I
to
said,
come
"Well,
up with
it's just like doing articles, just put a bunch together."
with the beginning, middle, and end, and then you have to fit the pitches in there.
Right. So
Drew,
we
Drew,
wrote.
I have a quick question from
Sure.
Drew's model trains. He says, "What is a right size layout?"
Well, that's actually discussed in the first chapter. So the question is, why am I calling it right size? Well, it's kind of a catchphrase because what happens is if you tell somebody I have a small layout, they go, "Oh, well, it's a small layout. I'm sorry." No, a small layout can be great. I mean, my room is 9'2" by 10'6". It's a small room, bedroom size, basically, maybe a little bit smaller than the average bedroom. And I can have a 3-hour operating session. So there's a lot of operations that you can do in a small space. And so don't look down on a small layout. There's a lot of operations you can do with just a 10-foot wall, 1 foot deep. You can have a fantastic little layout there. And that's kind of what the book is showing. So the other thing is what's right for me is not necessarily right for Bill or for Tom or for Chris or for any of the other guys that are out there listening to this. You need to design a layout that's right for you and the way you want to operate and what you enjoy about modeling and model railroading. You could build the wrong size layout, which could mean a small layout or it could be a big layout. A lot of times people get into this, well, I want to have this monster layout and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Well, first of all, do you have the resources to do it? Do you have the money? Okay. People don't want to talk about that too much. You know, yeah, some people don't have to worry about that, but most people do have a budget. Do you have the time? Do you have the skills? Do you have the ability? Do you have the time remaining in your life? Because a lot of people start these things when they're much older, and then as you get older, you realize I need glasses, or I can't bend down as much, or it's fine now. I'll do a duck under, and I'll do this, and I'll do that, and I'll pop up and do. And then after a while, you realize this is the completely wrong layout. It's killing me.
Right.
So you're not motivated to work on it, and then it just sits, and then you just get out of the hobby, and that's no good. So it depends on what you like as to what type of railroad you should design, and that's what I talk about a little bit in the first chapter. How you like to rail fan, how you like to operate. Do you like operations, or are you more of a person that likes to just sit back and let trains run? Well, if you're a person that likes to sit and watch trains run, a shelf layout 10 feet long and 1 foot wide is not going to be the right layout for you. So you have to design the layout that fits what you want, and don't go by what other people say or what works for Tom or Bill or whoever. You got to build what's right for you. So that's what I try to go into that a little bit. Lance also covers that a lot in his book. His is more focused on kind of the planning and the design and stuff. Mine covers that, but then I also cover operations, doing operating sessions, and doing a lot of other things. So mine is a little more broad in scope. Lance's book, I highly recommend it. Lance and I are good friends. I would recommend his book too. I mean, it's a fantastic read. He does a great job, and he talks about all these things. And a lot of things, we're very similar in our design philosophies. So you hear kind of a saying the same thing. It's like, well, if you're hearing it from Lance and you're hearing it from me and you're hearing it from other people, maybe there is a little bit of truth in there to at least consider. I mean, you don't have to. There's no hard and fast rules. As they say, it's your layout. You can do what you want, but understand that when you make those decisions, you may end up regretting them, or they may end up working out for you, depending on what you want to do.
Yeah, Michael Brochère agrees with you, and he says, very true. He says, I first built the layout for what he thought other people would want to come for. Then I didn't see those people come to run. Now that's
right.
now it's what I want. It's what I wanted for people to come. When
Exactly.
you were writing this book, you have 8 chapters in this whole thing, and it's 100 and I think 10 pages, 111 pages
112
long.
pages, yeah. They count the
112.
covers.
So exactly. It's 112 pages, but I'm sure you had more than 8 chapters that you could have filled up. I mean, or was it just that though? Did you have to cut a lot of things out? And
no, basically when Kalmbach contracted with me, they said I had to have so many pictures and so many words and stuff. They didn't tell me how many chapters, but pretty much it broke down into somewhere between 8 and 10. Actually, when I made the proposal, I had 10 chapters, but I ended up combining a couple of them because there wasn't enough information for just one chapter. And I thought it worked better. And again, as in the editing process, I was able to kind of combine a couple things together, and I was much happier with the way it came out. Again, the proposal was close. I just had to adjust some things.
Yeah, Tina Mohammed Model Railroad. Tina is in the house. Hello, Tina. Tina is an extraordinary. You should check her channel out, Tom. She's an extraordinary model railroader out of Las Vegas, Nevada, and she's just finished a project for a new escape room in Las Vegas that they wanted a small size layout done, and they hired her to do it. Tina is really good. She's good at what she does. She's good. And so your content in the beginning, your introduction is what's the right size layout, and you just explained that. And the chapter is what's the right size layout for you determining. And then you get into track planning. Why is that part of this this track planning is the right size layout?
Well, a lot of people talk to me about how did I design my layout? Why did I design it the way I did? And basically what you're trying to do is simplify what you see. A lot of times layouts are way too complicated. People try to put too much stuff into one space. Lance talks about negative space, and I echo that. If you look on my layout, there's a couple of areas like the bridge area behind me here and a few other areas. There's just scenery. You need to have a little bit of a visual break. If you think of it like if you went to a museum and you went to look at the artwork, and on this one wall, big wall, they had 50 paintings all hung all over the place, all real close to each other. You're overloaded. You can't appreciate it. So what you want to do, and what they do at the art galleries, is they put the painting there, and then there's a lot of empty space. They put a light on it, and then you move on to the next one and the next one. Well, the same thing is true on your layout. What you want to do is have some signature scenes or some focal points, and then other stuff is just kind of mundane. It looks right because it's there, but it doesn't draw your attention to it. Kind of like when you're watching a movie and you see all these background actors walking back and forth through the scene and stuff. You'll notice none of them are wearing bright clothes or a clown hat or something like that. They're just gray, black, other different color, just very mundane colors, and they just kind of blend in, but they look right because you're expecting to see people. If you're in an airport and there's nobody in the airport, the scene looks a little off. Well, the same thing, with your layout. If you get some, you want to have things that belong there, but you don't want to draw attention to it. So we talk about track planning and curves and staging and those kinds of things, and minimum radius. One of the things that people don't think about when you talk about turnouts is the turnout can actually be your limiting factor. If you put a number 4 turnout in, and then you say, well, I got 24-inch radius curves. Well, the number 4 turnout, actually the what they call the radius of closure, ends up being like a 15-inch curve. It's real tight. So it's like, that's why it's so tight there. But the rest of your layout's 24 inches. So why are we having problems on this one turnout? Well, the problem is that one little spot it now becomes your minimum. Right. So you'd be better off to go with the number 5 turnout on number 6. Well, they're bigger and they take up more. Well, you're going to sacrifice maybe operation. What are you trying to run also? If you're running large diesels, or if you're trying to run a large steam engine, they don't like the number 4 turnouts very well. So you want to go stick with the number 6s and try to stay up, as high as you can. But on the other side, if you go, well, I want a 36-inch radius curve. Okay, great. Well, I got to turn at the end of a 10-foot room. So I go 36 inches and 36 inches. Well, that doesn't give me any space in the middle there, hardly, to put a turnout to be able to do any switching or something. So there's trade-offs. Yes, go as big as you can, but then you go too far the other way. So those are things to consider. Yep.
Eric Haller, MRRO.com, says, I'm building my layout for what I want, and people still do not come, but I don't worry about it. And then Split Rock 323 replies, Eric, the reason they don't come over, it's not the layout, my friend. So, well, that's between you two guys. You can work that out.
Yeah. Well, that was something else that I considered when I built this layout here is I'm up in the mountains in Northeast Georgia. Not a lot of people up here. Definitely not too many model railroaders. I belong to a model railroad club, and they're about an hour away. And there's a handful of guys that belong to the club. And I knew that if I built a large layout where I need 10 operators, I would struggle to get that many people here at one time. So I chose to stay small, and that way there I can have a couple people over. It's easier to coordinate, and then to me it's also more personal. I've got some operating sessions, and I don't know everybody's name, and by the time I leave I still don't know everybody's name, and then by the time I go back again 3 or 4 months later, I've forgotten, unfortunately, what some people's names are. I'm not very good at remembering names. Once I learn your name, though, you're good. But it's sometimes it's hard. It's hard at these larger operating sessions. So I prefer the smaller operating session. It's a little more relaxed. You don't have the stress. This is a small switching layout, and that's also something I talk about in the book is operating. A lot of people sometimes are turned off when you say the term operations. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's just actually having fun with your layout. There's a large range of operations.
Absolutely. Lehigh Valley subdivision says, when I look at others' layouts, I look for the wow factor. And it usually is a scene like he says that you were talking about. Let's see. Split Rock says, I call the right size layout one that is manageable in terms of cost, maintenance, and space. I happen to agree with that 100%.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and stuff like that. And there was another question I passed. Uh, you can well, yeah. Michael Brochure says under build and simplify. You can always add more and more complexity later after running for a while. Yes, very true.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
one of the things that people have told me about my layout is, and they say, well, it's not a slam. It's a good thing. Is your layout is an achievable layout. They can see what I've done and go, well, I could do that, But you look at some of these other layouts, and they're monster layouts, double deckers, and all this other stuff. You look at it and go, I could never do that. I don't have the time, but so an achievable layout is also maybe the right size layout too,
yeah,
something that somebody
true.
could build and bring to completion. Some layouts will never be completed, and that's what the owner wants to do. He just wants to continue to work on it and stuff, and maybe never put down scenery, never do structures and stuff. Just continue to work on the layout.
Well,
For
some people.
me, yeah. Go
No,
ahead, Bill.
no. I was going to say some people are, I've met a few that have completed a layout and then have literally torn it down
Mm-hmm.
and then have gone back and rebuilt a new, entirely different
Yeah.
layout.
Yeah. One of the things that we were talking about with a couple of friends and myself was kind of we'll call it almost a disposable layout. You do a small layout and you build it to completion. You operate it for a while, and then when you're tired with it, you tear it down and you build something else. Pelle Soborg is kind of like that. When he was
Yeah.
building his layouts, he built some fantastic layouts. As soon as he finished them, he'd tear it down and build another one. I was like, man, that's a great layout. But he really wasn't into operations. I talked with him one time, and he's more of a rail fan. Which, if you build the layout to that, then you're going to see a lot more run throughs, not so much switching. You'll notice as his layouts changed, there was less and less switching. To the final layout that he built was primarily all for rail fanning, very little switching operations. But that
Yeah.
was what's right for him, and he enjoyed building and designing and all that other stuff. Once it was done, it was kind of over.
Yeah. I had an engine I sent to get overhauled and repaired by Mark Jewett, and he's one of the best in the business for DCC sound drop-in decoders. I'm giving him a shameless plug here, and I sent him a switching 1500 engine, and when he got back and said he was close to completion, he was going to put the CVs in and everything, and he was like telling me, oh, so when you run the train around the layout, we'll have this, this, and this. And I was like, when I read the thing, like you said about, people assume that you have this layout that, you run trains around. And I wrote him back and I was like, I said, Mark, my layout is primarily switching and I do operations. And then he wrote back and he said, well, that's a horse of a different color now. I have to reconfigure all your CVs and I'll put it in that the maximum speed is 30 miles an hour. And,
Right.
the dynamic brake kicks in I said, yeah, that's exactly what I want,
Mm-hmm.
to each his own,
Right.
A Mojave model railroad. And Tina says, I'm guilty to keep going back and adding more and more detail because I'm not happy. Sometimes less is more, and I have to wrap my head around that as well.
It's a hard lesson. When I was designing this layout, the first few track plans were nothing close to what I ended up with. I just had to keep erasing and taking stuff out. I tried to, again, like most people, try to put too much stuff in. Once you kind of get over that and you realize less can be more, and it doesn't take a lot to make an interesting operation. If you pick an industry that's spot specific, and there's several of them out there, it takes a lot more work to put the cars in. You got to pull one, set one out, respot one. You're getting a lot of switching from just one industry.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Versus a coal company or a coal plant, they're just loading the same car. So you just keep shoving it. You don't have to spot specific cars in specific locations. So those are some things to consider when you design. And I talk a little bit about that. Selecting spot specific industries or different industries that give you the crew a little bit more work. And then there's some other things that you can do to slow down the operation, which is what I talk about in some of the other chapters.
I was gonna get into that. New Haven Rail says, I built my current layout 14x6, a point to point, and recently purchased a layout that was in MR, which will add another 12 by 24 to what I have. I will be busy. Yes,
Yes.
creepy 013 says there's a difference between quote a model railroad and a railroad modeler. That's
Mhm.
very true. That's very
Yes.
and Eric Hall says operations perked my ear every time railroads operate and do not worry about weathering or pretty scenery. No, they do not. Uh, they do not.
Mhm.
John 2618 is in the house, I
Hey,
believe.
Johnny.
Yeah,
Glad you could make it there,
2618.
Johnny.
Yeah. And so what was interesting about your book, and I have to again, we're talking to Tommy K, my favorite all-time author right now, because he has this book. Uh, Michael Brochere, just before I plug this, is I've been into layouts with little or no scenery, but was so busy switching and operating that I never noticed the lack of scenery and can't wait to go back. Yes, absolutely. I agree
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
But what I like about this is in the second chapter of when you talk about the track layout, the planning of it, is you get into the layout of the easement or transition curve, and
Mhm.
you actually have the diagrams example of personalized standard tables,
Mhm.
and it really breaks it down. Whereas when I was early in my model railroading career, I would look at books like this and I'd get totally lost. But you have such a great way of explaining it
Right.
and diagramming it that it really is uh you know and the pitches just complement it, and you talk about layout
Yeah.
construction, which I think is a big component
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. Well, now that John Farrington's on here, we can talk about his layout. That is a perfect example of a right size layout for John. Because it's if you haven't seen John's layout, go check out his channel at John two six
Yes.
one eight. But if you have, you know what I'm talking about. He's got an apartment. He's got one room, and it's an L-shaped layout, and it's not very large, but it's got a lot of operation. It allows him to do the detailing that he wants to do. He weathers engines. His vehicle projects are just phenomenal. I mean, so it allows him to focus on those things. If he was building a huge layout, you wouldn't have time to work on those little things. So that's the right layout for him, and it's a perfect layout. I went and saw it, and I mean it's a lot of fun to operate, and it's a very simple, nothing complicated. He's got negative space. He's primarily focused on one industry. He's got a couple other industries. Very simple. You can look at it and you go, oh, okay, I understand. Switch these cars here, do this. Perfect. It's nothing complicated. Real relaxed operating session, which again is perfect for him.
How many people? Because I know in your acknowledgement section you know you give a lot of shout outs. How many people were involved in helping you put this together?
Wow. Well, it's a lot of my friends. You'll recognize a lot of the names there. John Farrington, Scott Thornton, uh, the guys from Iowa Interstate, a couple of guys there, Joe Atkinson, James McNabb. I'm drawing a blank on so many of the other names, but
Well, I
Tim
got it right here.
Garland, yeah, Tim
Michael
Garland,
Arms. You got
Michael
Keith.
Armstrong.
You got Keith Arms, Michael
Mhm.
Armstrong, Joe Atkinson, Stefan Boskowski, another
Yeah,
ski,
Bartelski, yes. And
Baltesky.
actually, he's a ski and he's modeling the Georgia Northeastern, but before it became the Georgia Northeastern, he's modeling the same
Ah,
area that I am. And then I've been contacted by another guy who's going to be modeling the Georgia Northeastern, and his name ends in a ski also. So apparently, you have to be a ski to be able to model the Georgia Northeastern or the Old Line or whatever term you want to use for this section of track here in Marietta. But
we have
no, it was a lot of basically it was a lot of my friends. I contacted them when I started writing the book. I kind of kept it low key. Contacted them. Would you be interested in supplying some photos? Everybody was real eager to. Oh, absolutely. Be glad to help. So I started getting photographs, and I had to get good quality photographs. So I had to know who was able to take photos, because some guys are great modelers, but they're not good photographers.
right,
And
right.
unfortunately, in a book, you got to have good photos, and the standards that Combach sets are pretty high. So I got to be able
Yeah,
to meet those standards. So I
yeah.
contacted them, and then all these guys were extremely helpful. I mean, without their help, I wouldn't have been able to do the book. I mean, there's no other way around it. I leaned on them for a lot of information, for photographs, for everything, and when I was contracted with the book, I was given a budget for being able to pay these guys a little bit of money for the photographs, which was great. None of them really were looking for that, but it's like, okay, well, I can go buy a freight car, or I can buy something, that I need for the layout. They were just doing it because they enjoy seeing their photos in being published in a book and stuff. The same thing with me when I was contacted by people. Absolutely, love to give you a photograph, so send it in and get a couple bucks or whatever. So without their help, I wouldn't have been able to do the book.
Sure. Randall Ellis says the West Plains Model Railroading Club HO layout is pretty much set up for simply running trains, and it's pretty much runs what you bring. So they're pretty much void of all the stuff. The Train Freak says I'm building a layout that will accomplish both point to point with balloon loops at both ends. And Tina from Mojave Model Railroad says, I tell people my layout is already built in my head. And trust me, you don't want to be in my head. Okay. Randall Ellis says it's on a few instances where you can see a 50-plus-year-old locomotive running alongside with modern day releases. He's talking about the West Plains model. Right. And Lee Blocker, how we haven't seen in quite a while. Hello, Lee. He says, hey, Bill and Tom, love your work. Thomas starting to replicate your layout.
Hi, Lee. Good to hear from you. I've corresponded with a lot of these people, so the names are coming back now when they write me. And again, some of the questions that maybe Lee asked me ended up being some of the information that I put in the book, because everybody just sends me, and I enjoy helping people because other people have helped me, so I'm paying it back.
Oh yeah,
if you will, because I've asked for so much help. I mean, you can't know everything when you start off in this hobby. So like when I was setting up my CVs for my proto throttle, Joe Atkinson gave me some CV settings, and here's what works for me, and I try. Perfect. I mean, exactly what I needed. And when I got into some other sections, recently was installing a decoder. A good friend of mine, he helped me out. So again, if somebody has a question, contact me through my website. There's a contact tab on go to thomasklimosky.com, hit contact, write me a question, and I do my best to answer them as soon as I can. Sometimes I'm tied up with other things, but I'll be glad to help you answer your questions or whatever.
We're talking with Thomas Klimoski. I said it right.
Hey, you got it. You got it.
And he wrote a new book called Building the Right Size Layout from Model Railroader, Comeback Media. And you can get it at the comebackhobbystore.com. And this is the book, Building the Right Size, because New Haven Rails wants, Bill, what's the name of the book? Get ready to order some books. So I will add this to the list. Yes, absolutely.
And if you can't find it, you can actually put the title in. It'll come up now. You can buy it through Amazon. I think it's the same price. But if you go to my website, I've got a couple of links on there. My son put a banner across the top. You can just click that link. It takes you right to the Combach page to order the book. And then I just recently did a blog on my website, gave you a little more information kind of about the book. And then there's a book tab you can also read. It kind of covers some extra highlights if you want to know a little bit more about what's in there.
Right. You have to excuse me because my computer is blowing up. My phone is blowing up. We are right now up here in New York City. The remnants of Hurricane Ida is working its way through New York and the Northeast here. And there's a big tornado watch in Richmond County. And so if I start to swirl and the picture breaks up, I'm gone. So just carry on without me. But it's the emergency. It's not as bad as it's been in Louisiana, and our prayers and thoughts go out to those people out there who've been affected by this hurricane and stuff, and for the loss of property and of life. We do keep them in our prayer. Let's see, the train, where is it? Oh, Lehigh River Subdivision says you can be in this hobby your whole life and learn something new, and always something to learn. Yes. Very true. Very true.
I see a question from Drew Dudes Model Trains. He says, if I was to design a layout, with the space you have, what changes would you make for continuous running with larger equipment? If I had to do this, my thing is I'm not into continuous running, but if you are into continuous running, The issue is that as you come into the room, you're going to have a lift out or a drop down or something like that. That's usually the biggest problem. So I would probably simplify my lift out. Right now, it goes in and I have to put bolts in, and it takes a little while to line up. Lance Minheim has one where it's easy. It just kind of drops in and uses those re-railer sections and stuff. And then I do larger radius curves, and I probably wouldn't have the peninsula. I would probably just do it around the room. For me right now, the aisles are 28 inches wide. It's a little tight. I'd like to have a little bit more room. If you're doing a continuous run in a 9x10 room, I would probably do away with the center peninsula, or maybe skinny it up if anything. But if you want to follow your train around the room, the peninsula blocks you from doing that, because you'd have to go around and then back again and stuff. So the way mine is set up is you follow the train around. If you were going from one end to the other, which is staging, which starts in my wife's craft room, comes into the room, you walk around, and then you end up in the center aisle. You come down this side, turn, and then you end at the end of the peninsula, this is the end of the peninsula here. So you're in this center section here. So you're walking and going in the same direction. On my layout, left is always to the north. So as you're walking through the layout, it's always in the same direction. So that helps operators also, which is something I mentioned when you're setting up your layout. When you start flipping directions, like you go up through a helix and now left is no longer north, right is north, it kind of throws people off and you kind of get lost. So signs on the layout are also good. If you start doing those kinds of things, you got to let people know what town are you in, which direction are you going, all those things, because I know where Marietta, Georgia is. Bill may not. You may never have been there. So,
no, I do not.
If I tell you take the train to Marietta, you're going, is it that way or this way? So if you give people diagrams, that helps, because you know it, because it's in your mind. It's common knowledge. Everybody knows where no. If I go to other people's layouts and they say, take this train to Pittsburgh. Okay, which way's Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh.
Or are we east, north, south? I don't know. Where are we starting? So, those are little things that you can do that help. And I talk about that in the chapter on operations and operational details and things like that, which talks about things you can do to help a small layout operate larger. If you see my videos and stuff, you notice that I'm into the micro operations, the little nuances, the derails, the operating switches, the gates that open, the doors that open, all those little things slow you down. Well, that's what the prototype crews deal with every day. I mean, you'll notice they're not moving fast. They've got a lot of stuff to do before they can pick up a car or set out a car. And those are some of the prototype procedures. Like when you come in and you're coupling up to a car, you come in, bang, make the connection and pull the car. That's not the way it's done on the prototype. They come in, they'll do a safety stop. The conductor will get off. He'll inspect the car. Is the car on the rails? Because if you couple to it and it's not on the rails, guess what? Now you've got to explain why it's off the rails.
That's exactly right.
If before you couple to it, you find out the other guys knocked it off the rails at the end, or when it pushed it through the budding block at the end, or whatever, you're good. But so you slow these things down. You do make the connection. Give me a stretch. We're good. We're going to lace up the air. You can just verbalize these things. You don't have to sit there and time them out. I mean, you could go too far. You don't want to do that.
Well, you're absolutely right, Tom. And I've had that incident. I've had that where I've had former guys I work with from the transit, down here, and they get like really annoyed when I would do things like that. I said, well, we got to do this like we used to do in the yard. And they were like, oh, no, I'm going to run this train really fast. And I'm like, no, you're not. Split Rock 323 says small layouts need to add nuance, not nuisance.
Correct.
He's rough.
And that's an individual decision that people have to make. I have these things. Yes, you have to do some of them. Obviously, the derails work. If you don't remove the derail and you run a car over it, it's going to derail. But so you have to remove the derail. But I'm not sitting on somebody, screaming at them that you didn't pause for 3 seconds and do a car inspection.
Right. You're not making
want to make it fun. It's just the idea to slow down, enjoy it. We're not in a rush. I think Lance Minheim made the comment sometime. What are you going to do after you finish the operating session? Go mow the yard? I mean, I'd rather operate than go mow the yard.
Right, exactly.
So slow down, enjoy it, and have fun.
And one of the guys I know, that former TA worker who has a layout of his own, when I went over there to operate, if any of the guys would, uh, he has a derailleur on his one of his yard leads, and if you went through it and derailed the train, he'd simply walk over to you with a urine cup specimen, and he'd hand it to you and just say, "Okay, go ahead, you know, time out for you." Some guys would actually go urinate in the cup and bring it back to him and stuff. But
Yeah,
he
yeah,
was like, "No, no, I was just a joke. It's a
yeah,
joke."
yeah. No,
You know.
I
Eric
don't
Hall
have to.
says no continues running unless it has a Christmas tree in the center on 3-rail track and named after the host of AML, Lionel. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
you know.
Again, everybody's got what they like. That's one of the nice things about the hobby. You can do what you like. You don't have to do what I want or what Bill wants. Or do what you want to do. How you enjoy the hobby. That's probably the
Yeah, no,
biggest thing.
exactly.
And that's what I'm trying to hopefully show a little bit in the book is, don't follow the lead of someone else if that's not really where you want to go. I mean, if that's what you like and those are the type of operations you enjoy, then great. But don't build the wrong layout.
I think it's
That's what
also,
happens.
yeah, Michael Brochere says, who knew the teacher was right? Someday you'll use this math needed for figuring out my aisle space. Where did that 4 inches go or 4 feet go? Yes, you're absolutely right. Uh, but yeah, I think it's, would you agree with me that I think it's important that that you, that you design a layout that from something that you know and have researched?
Yeah, I think leaning, the more you can lean towards the prototype, the better off you are. And even if you're not following 100%, let's say you're freelancing a layout, that's fine. But maybe take some prototype examples and use those for your towns and stuff, because the railroad's already figured it out. So just, do Google Maps or Google Earth or whatever, and look and see and find an industry that you like. Um, there's there's someone that I know that is doing kind of that right now. They're looking at different industries and are going to assemble them together on a layout, and it's going to work because they're exactly following the track plan at the industries. It's just the way they're connected may not be prototypical, but they're going to operate very prototypically. So
Right.
those are some of the things that you can do if you're freelancing. Now, if you're leaning a little more towards the prototype, I'm more proto freelance. It's based on the prototype, but I'm leaning a little towards the freelance because to get things to fit and stuff, I had to move some things around. It's not an exact track plan of the Georgia Northeastern. It's set up in the same orders and there are the same industries, but there's some things that were changed around a little bit so to get it to fit. So I'm leaning a little more towards freelance, and it's a sliding scale. You don't have to be rigid 100%. Even the 100% prototypical guys have to make concessions because they don't have unlimited space. So you're going to end up compressing something somewhere or eliminating an industry or eliminating a town. And even Tony Custer says that, he had to eliminate some towns. They didn't have a big interchange or they didn't have a lot of industries and stuff. And he didn't want to have town. He wanted some space between them because he's running timetable and train orders. So he didn't want to, push things together too much. So
Yeah.
that's something else to consider. What type of operations, if you want to do timetable and train order, you're going to need a bigger layout. If you want to just
Yes.
do local switching, or you could model a short line. Those
Yeah.
are some options.
Tom Holly says any idiot can copy better than he can invent. Yeah,
Yeah.
I resemble that remark. I do.
Yeah.
Let's see. Eric Hall. A lot of. I just Lee Blocker has just. I just got bit by the railroad bug watching this show. Well, good, Lee. Good for you. Lehigh Valley Subdivision says I've been using Google Earth a lot recently for a town on my layout and stuff. And
I think Google Earth was invented for model railroaders.
I think so too.
It is an amazing tool. I love using that. I mean, I'll talk to my friends. Actually, Tom Holly's one of the guys who he'll mention a town. It's like, oh, great. So then I'll go on and oh yeah, this and that. Oh, it's great. You can see all the track and stuff. I just wish some of the old railroading was still there. I mean, it's a shame some of these lines were pulled up and stuff. It's like, it would have been so neat if this was still in operation. But
Michael
there's a lot
Brochure.
of great short lines out there now.
Yeah, there is. There absolutely is. Michael Brochure has a good question. He says, "How important is distance between model towns?"
You do want to have some negative space or some empty space between your towns. It depends on how big of a room you're working on. The problem is that when your locomotive's coming into one town and the caboose is still in the other town, you kind of lose that illusion. How long of a train do you want to run? Are you talking a 10-car train? Or are you talking a 20-car train? Uh, there's a couple of friends of mine that like running really long trains. Well, he's got a lot of space between the towns because he didn't want to have, but he ended up building a double deck layout because he wanted the long runs. He's more of a rail fan. So that was the right layout for him. It's a beautiful layout. There's some photos in the book that highlight his layout. He's meticulous in his track work. It's an unbelievable layout, but it's a very large layout, and he knew that going in. So for him, a large layout was the right size layout. So I'm not saying small is the only way to go. For me, it was a good decision. For a lot of people, it's a good decision, but for some people, it's the wrong decision.
Yeah, Eric Hall says on the LDRR layout that I operate on, the track makes a left on the model, but in real life, it makes a right. Why? It's a basement wall, and the city does not want the street in the front to be dug out. That comes down to logistics and architectural design.
Yes.
You know,
What you want to try to do is capture the flavor or the look, and that's one of the things. If you look over my shoulder here, this is the Tate Yard, which I did an article on the locomotive facility. And if you look at the locomotive facility, it looks very similar. There's a few little things that are off, but the building looks right. The fuel is in the same spot. The sand tower is a unique sand tower. So when people look at it, they go, "That's Tate. That's the GNR locomotive facility." Well, the reality is on the prototype, it's on the other side, flipped around and facing south rather than facing north.
Absolutely correct.
But nobody really notices
that. It's the same. It's the same thing on my layout. I have the Kentile sign, and now the Kentile sign and the railroad and the South Brooklyn Railroad stretched all the way along the Brooklyn waterfront. So where the Kentile sign is, as opposed to Sunset Park, Bush Terminal, is over 4.5 miles from each other. But in my layout, it's right here on my layout. But people don't see that when they come in and they see people who are from New York, from Brooklyn, and they see the Kentile sign. They don't correlate that the distance between Bush Terminal to there. They're like, oh, Bush Terminal. Oh, and the Kentile sign. You know what I'm saying? So, I'd like to go by what Miles Hales always refers to is the Walt Disney effect.
Mm-hmm.
You want to get that sameness that people will look and they'll visualize it and they'll see a familiarity to it.
Right.
And say, oh, I know. It sparks something in their memory.
Right.
He said that's what Disney does. What it does is it sparks a memory. It may not be the same, but it's like, wait, I've seen that before someplace.
Well, one of the things people don't realize, the Cinderella Castle actually uses compression as it gets taller, the windows get smaller because it makes it look like it's taller.
Right.
They've done selective compression or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of neat. They're using some of the same tricks that model railroaders use, or we're using what they use. Where you compress or you make things look big, and it's all an illusion. I mean, obviously these are model trains; they're not the real thing. So you have to make compromises. The question is, what can you live with? Some people don't want to compromise very much. Other people, it's okay if I stray away from the prototype a little bit more.
Tina Coet said Mojave Valley Railroad. She's been working on designing a layout for a company that in Las Vegas that's doing, I believe, an escape room. And she's working on it. They asked her to build a layout. And she's saying here, after working for a group that had no idea of trains and scale, it was hard to explain. You can't fit an entire town in a 3x6 layout diorama. We had to cheat to give the illusion of what they envisioned.
Yes. Yeah. Use a lot of building flats. That'll help save some space and stuff. And you can compress things a little bit. A lot of times if you're trying to capture a specific industry or specific building, people won't realize it if you're taking it and as long as you're close. If it had 4 doors and you build it with 3 doors, most people aren't going to notice the difference or remove a window or two. But if the scale starts getting too tight and it starts getting too tall and stubby and stuff, then you start noticing it. One of the things that I like to do is try to have large industries on the layout, something that really looks rail served. A lot of times people will put a little tiny building and then the boxcar is bigger than the building.
Right,
so
exactly.
That's not very realistic.
Where it sits on the siding.
Exactly. So I try to go for larger industries that actually dwarf the cars, because if you look at these industries, the industries are huge. The rail cars look really small when you see them at some of these industries. So I would rather have fewer and larger industries than several and smaller.
Right. Creepy 1013 says, I'm using Carl Brainard's layout as an inspiration. Great use of small space. In parentheses, he writes, Scott Thornton's in the house, everybody.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah, he wants to know what he tuned in. What did I miss?
We'll start back from the beginning. Hi,
Yeah,
Scott.
hi, Scott. Welcome to Model. Yeah, we're talking. It's a good thing. What a segue. Did you guys plan this in cahoots? What a segue. We're talking about Thomas's new book, Building the Right Size Layout, here. And you can get this at Comeback Media at comebackhobbystore.com. Tina bought it, Lee bought it, and one other guy bought it. Yeah.
Well, Scott Thornton's got a couple of photos in there, and he's even got his world famous writing conductor. He talks about how he does his writing conductor in there, and his operational switch stands and all that other stuff. So Scott's another one that helped me out. Look at all these people that helped me out. I couldn't have done it without him. I'm telling you. And John Farrington's got a couple of photos of his layout in there too. So it's good. I've got a lot of photos, and there's a few people on there. Bill and I were talking prior to the show. There's a gentleman, Tom Foster, who's got a layout that's very close and near to Bill's heart. What's he?
South Brooklyn. He does
South Brooklyn. I've never seen photos of that before. So Tom Foster's got some photos in there on his Brooklyn layout. Yeah, there's Scott's layout.
Scott's, with the magnetic conductor and stuff. Very, very well done. Yeah. And there's this other. I love this little. It's like when you're in the movie theater, you know, Scott. It's like when you're in the movie theater and they what do you call it? They flash the word popcorn across the screen. You know, it's like the subliminal message. I like the fact that you guys are like standing prominently, holding the proto throttle prominently out in front of your chest. Yeah, like little subliminal message. Yeah. To get the proto, which I think is a great thing, and why not?
Yeah, we talk a little bit about the proto throttle. I'm not beating people up over it, but for me, it's great. I mean, I really enjoy operating with it. And Scott actually has made some a proto throttle upgrade kit where you've got a bell button now that looks like a bell, and he's got the reverser handle. It's kind of a square handle, and then the headlight knobs are ovals as opposed to the round knobs. So I had to get some of those and upgraded my proto throttle. It looks nice. Scott did a fantastic job. He's doing some 3D printing now. So check out Scotty's model store there. Go to Scott Thornton's Facebook page or whatever, and you can find a link to his store.
I like. Yeah, no. Let's give Scott put down your what do you call it there, and we'll flash it across the bottom. Yeah. Why not? You know, we're an equal opportunity. We're all about capitalism here. Let's make money. Yeah. I'm all for that, helping out the model. I love the fact that again and you guys can't see, it's not really good, but he shows pictures of wiring and putting shelf layout of putting his Digitrax and stuff. You really can't do it. So that's why you guys got to go out and buy the book to get chock full of nuts. Tom also discusses in this book about details. He talks about the open door train, opening the door. On one of his kits, he has an automatic door that he opens by turning the air vent on top. It's a Lego piece, and he goes into great detail about that. Right. Also talks about the derailleur and talks about enhancing, the Lego gear reducer is the key component that makes the gear. But he also talks about enhancing time on the layout, working prototypically. He says Joe Atkinson adds a small luggage pad locks the turnout control levers on his layout. The locks prohibit the use of the turnout until they are unlocked and removed from the eye hook on the lever, which makes, and he has several pictures of it that show you what and how it's done. These aren't anything that cannot be done. Joe Atkinson.
It's more feasible on a smaller or medium-sized layout. When you get to the larger layouts, you don't really have the time or the ability to do that kind of stuff. But it's worth it. It's worth it on a small layout.
Tina wants to know: do you find it easier to model an idea that has a unique or trying to model that is unique or trying to model a prototype building or track plan?
It's probably easier just to follow the prototype. It takes a little more artistic ability to freelance stuff. So that's why I kind of like that art side a little bit. That's why I lean a little more towards the freelance. I like to look at a kit as an example. The one of the kits over here that's my Emery's Corporation is actually a Walters kit that I've reimagined into something else. I like to kit bash, so I take these components and try to make something different out of it that looks similar to what I'm trying to model. Some of these things, the problem is on some of these places that I can't get photos of it, and you can't see it with Google Earth because it's set back from the road, and they won't allow you to take photos there. I tried to get into Emery's to take photos, and they said, "Yeah, thanks, no."
No.
so I had to freelance because I could only see certain parts of the building, and everything was way off in the distance. So yeah, again, it's probably a little bit easier if you're sticking to the prototype and following the prototype track plan. When you start to stray a little bit, then you start to get into this fantasy, and you start trying to do too much, and that's where you have to kind of rein things back a little bit and try to follow the prototype, or say, what would the prototype do? They wouldn't have a switchback and a double switchback or something like that. It'd be too much trouble to get a car out. As an example, there's a layout that I've operated on, and to get the car out, you got to go through one switch and then into a switchback. It's like a double switchback. Well, the tail of the switchback only gives you an engine and maybe one car. Well, you got 3 cars on the track. So you got to go in, pull one, go back, pull. It's like a real railroad would never do that, because that's just it's too
Waste of time
aggravating.
and money.
The crew would just revolt. So try to keep things simple. If you look at my track plan, it's very simple. You can pretty much figure it out. I mean, you don't have to take a long look at anything, and you go, yeah, okay, switch, that's it. Goes right into that industry. That one goes to that. Nothing real complicated. No super switchbacks or anything that's just off the wall. So try to stick as close as you can to the prototype when you're designing your track work.
Yeah, Eric Hall says exactly. Very interested in the input and output of industries, about what is in the car, why it is there, and where it is coming from or going to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and sometimes that's hard to find out. But if you do a little snooping around, sometimes if you go on the internet, you can find out what the cars or what they're shipping and stuff. The one industry that I have over here, Universal Alloy, ships out flat cars with aircraft parts on them. Could never really figure it out while I was talking with a chat group that we were, and all of a sudden somebody had something, they found something. All of a sudden it was like, it's the floors for the aircraft is what they're shipping out. And I had a photo of what was on the car, but I couldn't really figure out what the parts were and how they went into an airplane. It was, obviously wasn't a wing. It wasn't something that you could easily distinguish. So through the internet, through some other connections, and someone knew somebody else, and it was like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's the floor sections. And that's exactly what they ship out. And so that answered the question.
Yeah, Lehigh Valley Subdivision says being able to visualize things in your head and actually be able to see what you want to create is a nice ability to have. And Scott Thornton says, now that you have completed, Tom, your railroad and have published your book, is the Georgia Northeastern going to stick around, or are you interested in a new theme for your modeling efforts?
Stay tuned.
Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, the Georgia Northeastern will probably stick around for a little while, but I got some other stuff thinking about. Not there yet, not ready for a public release yet, but yeah, I'm thinking about some things. A couple of people may know kind of where I'm going with this, but yeah, I got some other things, but I will stick with the Georgia Northeastern for a while. It's kind of grown on me. I mean, it's like family now. You can't get rid of your cousins or your sisters or brothers or whatever.
True.
This is what I worked on. I mean, I got to ride the engine. I got to work on the line. So it's always going to be a part of me. So yeah, it's gonna stick around for a while. But as I've told other people, sometimes people are afraid. Well, I'm going to wait and build my dream layout. I said, well, why don't you start building something now? You don't have to build something big. Build something small. Practice your skills. Do your wiring. Do your DCC installs. Do all these other things. You're not going to lose money on that. You're going to need that eventually. And then
Right.
eventually, if you want to build a bigger layout, then you tear it down and move on. But you're not losing that much. And a lot of times people wait until they decide to build this monster layout, but then they don't have the skills that they need to do that because they haven't been practicing. As an
Right.
example would be is imagine a football player that only wants to play in the Super Bowl. Never
Well,
practices, never attends another game, just shows up on Super Bowl Sunday and says, "Put me in, coach. I'm the starting quarterback."
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what happens. The guys will wait, and it's like, do something now, even if it's small, even if it's, you don't think it's your dream layout. That's okay. Do
Yeah.
something. Enjoy the hobby now. Learn what you like. You may find you like something. Some guys said, "Oh, I'm going to hand lay all my track and all this stuff." Well, try hand laying on a small layout. You may decide, I don't really enjoy hand laying, or maybe I really enjoy hand laying, so I'm going to do I'm going to do turnouts. I'm going to do everything.
Yeah.
It's it's
Jerry,
something that you want to do.
yeah, Jerry Santarell. He says the book sounds like the book sounds very interesting, even if you have a layout. I have to say yes, even though you have a layout. I have to tell you that on page 83, on the thing he talks about, and a lot of guys in model railroading overlook this in real life for prototypical operations. If you do it, or you just want to add realism, is chalking the car wheels. Now,
Yeah.
one of the things is a wheel chock for a model railroad can be built using a piece of 30-second styrene H column. The styrene was cut with the 45-degree angle at one end, and a piece of 0.015 wire was added for a handle. A small amount of post tack was applied to the channel, the wheel chock, and it sits. I have to tell you that I have a layout, and that was something I learned.
Yeah.
From this.
Yeah,
So,
and also Tom Holly will remind you, remember to remove the wheel chock, because when you run over them on the prototype and also on the model railroad, they work as a derail. So
they do. I actually can tell you that from real experience.
yeah. So you want to remember to remove the wheel chock, which is again another thing that slows you down because you want to make sure that you do it. And I mentioned blue flags and some of these other things, those little details that are operation. I spent Tom Holly was a phenomenal resource. He was a retired Norfolk Southern engineer for many years, and he's there to answer all my questions. I mean, I know a little bit about the prototype because I worked on it as part time, but nothing like working on the railroad 5 days a week, 10, 15 hours, whatever, for so many years. So he gave me
more like 8 days.
A lot of great information that I put down in this prototype chapter, and again, it was through his help and then a few other people that I was able to write that section. But it brings up a lot of things that sometimes model railroaders don't think about when it comes to operations, and it kind of hopefully helps you be able to rail fan a little better, because now you know what the crew's doing. Why are they just sitting there? Well, because they're walking the brakes on, or they're walking this, or they're doing it, or they're doing this, or doing that. Go ahead, Bill.
1066. Any tips for developing a realistic operating scheme for a small crew?
Small crew. Yeah, I was fortunate. I was able to copy the jobs that the Georgia Northeastern does. So if you're modeling the prototype, that makes it a little bit easier. If you're freelancing, what you want to start doing is it goes back to the design phase. And when I was designing the layout, and actually my previous layout, I designed jobs into specific sections, so that I knew that I was going to run a North Local switch crew, or a Bear Creek switch crew, or something like that. So I would start off in the yard. You're going to go to this area. You're going to switch the industries, and then come back. Or you could set it up as it's starts off in town in yard A, is going to switch town B, C, and then end up in D. So you want to start thinking about, as you're designing the layout, how you're going to operate it. How are you going to switch the cars when they get to that point? If you've already got a layout already built, then you want to start breaking things down into what would be a reasonable job. And I talk about a little bit of that. It's timing out how long it takes to actually switch a car.
Yeah.
If you figure that out, if you just come in at a normal speed, hook it up, and you go through, and I've got some time studies in the book that talks about how long it takes. What you do is you figure out how many of those you're going to have, and how long of an operating session you want to have. If you want the local crew to be 30, 45 minutes, you figure out how many cars you're going to switch, how long it takes, and then design the job around that. And understand that it may take you 45 minutes. If you have a guest operator, it's probably going to take them a little bit longer. And that's something that I did on my old layout. Was I had a series of switch crews and one led into the next, so that even if one was delayed, it wasn't going to mess up everything, and because you didn't want guys to feel stressed that that you didn't finish and you got other trains coming through and you got to hurry, we're running behind. That takes the fun out of it. So I tried to design it understanding that I added some time in there because they weren't going to be as well known with the layout as I was, and know how to switch the cars. They maybe take an extra couple moves. Well, that's going to take extra time. So I tried to figure that out. So work the job to yourself, figure out what that takes, and then you can use that for your crew. I like to have a 2-person switch crew, which is really helpful. One to operate the proto throttle, and the other one to do the paperwork and to be the conductor, which is exactly what happens on the real crews now
right.
Current operation. And that also helps with the engineer being more realistic when they operate, because if you're operating the throttle and you're trying to do the switchless and you're trying to do all these other things, you're going to go through the grade crossing, you're not going to blow the horn or ring the bell. You're going to be doing too many other things. You can't focus on that. If you just run the locomotive, there's a lot of stuff to do when you're running just the locomotive. So, and then for me, I like the communication of 3 cars to a coupling, 2 cars, 1 car. That'll do centered and set, and go through the red zone procedures and all those other things, and speak the language that the prototype does. Tim Garland's got an excellent video, and Tim actually came to my layout and we were doing the same thing. There's some videos out there with operating the proto throttle. Tim, and it was using one of his prototype conductors, the actual conductor that he works with on a kind of a daily basis. It was just so neat to hear him talking the language, and it was like you were listening to a scanner,
Right, exactly.
P50, pull ahead 2 cars. That'll do. Get a center. Say, okay, we're clear. Pull. It's like it was just like listening to the scanner, and that's what I kind of like here. I like doing the same thing.
Split Rock 323 has a question. He says, Tom, what do you think about adding switch locks on the fascia to simulate that procedure? This seems to be a popular feature among smaller layout owners, operators.
Yes. I think it's good. You just have to be careful it doesn't become too cumbersome. There's a friend of mine that's figured out that he's put like electrical contacts, and the lock makes the switch be able to be thrown or not thrown by removing it from one eye and putting it onto the other eye, and that's kind of a neat way to do it. There's some other people that have done some different things, like Joe Atkinson's, the actual control rod is locked. So yeah, if it's not too cumbersome for you, I have locks on the gates. So to actually open the gate, you have to take a key, open the little luggage padlock, open up the little door that covers over the control, and then you can crank the gate, which is basically simulating what a crew would do, because they got to go and unlock the key, to get the key, unlock the padlock, so then they can open the gate. So that's what I did.
Lee Blocker wants to know, do you have elevation on your layout? Because on your left, it seems higher.
They're the exact same height, 54 inches.
Oh, okay. So it's probably you're slumping this way.
Yeah, I'm leaning one way or the other.
Yeah,
when the camera may not be quite level, but yeah,
right.
There's no elevation changes other than going from the main down to the sidings. The sidings are set on the layout base. The main line is set up on cork, so you get a little bit of a drop down as you come from one level down to the next. If you're coming off the main, just like on the real railroads, where main is higher and then the sidings are usually set down a little bit lower.
Lee wants to know, are you talking about law enforcement scanners, Eric, your channel, sir? No, he's talking about regular. I don't know what Eric Hall is talking about, but it's usually railroad scanners. I myself like to give as much realism to prototypical operations as possible, and I take the different slant on that. When I'm having an operating session, what I usually do is I try to either copy or replicate what you would find in a train crew room. And usually what I do is I take the bathroom door off and I loosen the toilet seats, and I take all the soap out and everything that's hygienically to wash your hands, and I rip newspaper, little small strips of it, and use that for toilet paper, and take all the toilet paper out. And I stick a lot of wet newspaper in the corner, and then turn the heat up in the bathroom so you get that rancid smell. So I try to replicate that as much as possible. And when I serve coffee, it's usually like mud. Like when you pour it, it's like elastic. So
Yeah.
I try to give that realistic, I brought a friend one time to the job, and he had this illusion of like what it was like, because he was a model railroad and I was still working, and I got him to come with me. I got permission for him to come in the yard, and he was very disillusioned when he said, I have to use the bathroom, and I told him over there, and he walked in and he came back out again, and he was like, is that what you guys use? I said, yeah. He says, that's not what I was expecting. I said, I know this isn't like operating at your house,
Yeah.
where where you and the wife cleaned for 4 hours. This
True.
this is the real deal.
Yeah. Well, my friend Tom Holly says, if we want to really be prototypical, what we'll do is we'll call you at 2:00 in the morning, tell you got to be here at 4.
Right.
Then we'll turn the AC down as cold as it'll go, and then I'll stand around with you with a mister, and I'll spray you as you stumble around through the train room using a flashlight, trying to follow the. It's always sunny and 72 degrees in my.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Exactly right. You are exactly right. What do we have? Some more. Just hide Split Rock flying. Oh, he's talking among themselves. Old Navy coffee. Yeah, that's what it is. Old Navy. Flying Crow. Bill, you're taking prototypical railroading just a little too far. Well, it adds to realism, bro. It adds to realism. When I always get a kick out of like when we're operating, and it's like you said, 72 and well lit. And I go back to the dime when it's 4:30 in the morning, and I'm like, out in the rain. I'm like trying to avoid the puddles by the third rail. 1066 says professional bus driver realizes his job is closer to railroading than he thought. I have to agree with you on that. I know plenty of professional bus drivers who who have switched over to become motormen for the Transit Authority and make very good motormen, very good, and stuff like that. Listen, this is Tommy K's book, Building the Right Size Layout by Model Railroader, Combach Publishing Media, CombachHobbyStore.com. If you haven't already purchased it, do yourself a favor. Go out and purchase it. It's chock full of information, chock full of little tidbits, great photos, great insight, and great looking stuff. It really is. And Tom, once again, congratulations on writing this book and completing it. And as always, being a friend to the Model Railroading Live thing. And we always look forward to having you on.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Again, very well liked and very well received. And to all the guys that helped you, John Farrington, Scott Thornton, Tony Kessler, all the guys that helped you in the book.
Tom Holly, yes.
Yes, all of them. That's what makes the community really a working layout and a working community. So thank you again, Tom. I greatly appreciate it. Before you guys run away, and Tom, you can stick around for this. Before you guys run away, I want to make this special announcement. I told you that MRL, Model Railroading Live, Who's Big Bill Talking To, is embarking on new and very interesting guests. We are holding a special Who's Big Bill Talking To September 11th. That is a Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, our time in the States. We will be interviewing Gordy Robinson, the new president of the National Model Railroad Association, and getting his input and take on what he hopes to do and as the new president. And we're having it on Saturday because he lives all the way in Scotland, in the uppermost northern part, I think almost pretty close to the Antarctic, if that's where it is. He's pretty well out there. So the best time for him is Saturday at 3 p.m., which will be 8 p.m. his time, and it will afford us to give a comprehensive show. So that's going to be a special show on September 11th. At 3 p.m. Eastern Time, we're going to flood the social media, our Facebook, as well as our other social media platforms. And I'd be interested if you could tell your friends to come along and have your questions ready. And we will definitely delve into asking the new president of the National Model Railroad Association what he's hoping to do, what he's hoping to gain, and where, and also about his model railroading experiences and what layouts he's doing and what's he working on. And he's pretty busy. He's a family man, young man with a wife and a couple of kids, and got a job, and he's taken over the responsibilities of being the president of the National Model Railroad Association. So that's a big thing to handle. So with that said, again, I want to thank Tom for coming on the show, and to Ari and to John for their executive producer. And again, my apologies to Mr. Rod Stewart for not getting you in. But the book, sorry, Rod, but the book was just a little bit more important than talking about your big skyscrapers. But anyway, sorry about that, buddy. So with that said, again, thank you. You guys be well, be safe, but most of all, be blessed out there. Have a great week. Stay well, stay safe. Okay, everybody? And we'll see you guys on the radio.